Virtual reality. It is incredible. Unless you become a real fighter pilot, it's the closest you'll get to flying a military aircraft. But here's the problem. Expecting a new player to fly a one-to-one recreation of a fighter jet is like putting me at the helm of the USS Enterprise.
Alright, so there's no stick, but there's a throttle. I want to go that way, but the throttle doesn't make me go that way. Also, why are you beeping?
This is just a painful experience, so how can we make this more accessible? This is VTOL VR. It's basically DCS but without the 700-page manual, and despite the way it looks, it remains a surprisingly deep combat flight sim. And the concepts it can teach you will not just jumpstart your DCS journey, but also prepare you for a little something that's coming.
So I just wanted to point out, VTOL VR did it first!
But obviously only conceptually. And that's something that VTOL VR is extremely good at.
So while you may not learn how to start up a Hornet, a Tomcat, a Warthog, a Fulcrum, Flanker, Fishbed, but what you will learn is the concept of a startup procedure. So if the goal is to start up this entire aircraft, you have to complete steps A, B, C, and all the way to the final step, which will give you a fully operational aircraft. And typically that involves turning on the engines, but if you notice, we can't actually turn these on unless our aircraft is started. So let's flip on the battery.
Left engine failure.
But even though our battery's on, our engine still can't start because this thing is just not capable of turning the engines over. But what it can turn over is a smaller engine. So let's keep those engines off for now and turn on the APU, which is just a smaller engine. And now that the APU is fully started, we can now use that smaller engine to start the main engines. And with the engines fully running, you'll notice it's kind of loud. So let's go ahead and now turn off the APU because we don't need that anymore, and shut the canopy so we can hear ourselves. And just like that, our engines are now running, but if you notice, none of our systems are actually online, so our startup procedure is still not complete until we turn on everything. And of course, most importantly, before we can even start moving, we need to turn off the parking brake.
Now keep in mind, startup procedures are very unique per airframe, so you can't just take this to DCS and just expect it to work. Taking off, however, is a different story.
The idea before taking off is that you want to have either a flaps of 1 or a flaps of 2. The more flaps you have, the more lift you generate at lower airspeeds. So I generally like to use full flaps for both takeoff and landing, but I know some people like to use a flap of 1 for takeoff and flaps 2 for landing. So let's go with flaps 1. Then we will continue holding our brakes, but we will throttle up, not to afterburner, but to mill power. We're keeping an eye on our RPMs, making sure they stop moving. And once they've stopped moving, we'll light the cans, which is put in the afterburner, and release the brakes, grab our stick, and wait for 150 knots. Once we hit 150 knots, we'll start to pull back. There's 150, we'll pull back, and then we'll hold it here until it takes off. And just like that, we're airborne, so we'll do gear up, flaps up, and we can start flying. Now, of course, this whole concept of startup and taking off is going to be pretty basic for veteran DCS and VTOL VR players, obviously. But for new players, not having just a simple button to start up the aircraft is going to be mind-blowing. But let's go ahead and move on to something that's a little bit sexier. Something that every fighter pilot dreams of doing.
Contact. Hold that position.
Just kidding, it's dogfighting. Flag, true, or lead pursuit, 1 circle, 2 circle, instantaneous or rate, taking the vertical or turning and burning. All these dogfighting concepts can be learned with VTOL VR. You just need to do a little bit of research and put it into practice. But to help you get a jump start, here's some of the basics. The most fundamental thing you will ever learn about dogfighting is energy management. Energy equals speed. Too little of it means you'll be pulling and wondering why you just can't get that nose around, and too much of it means you'll be looking at life through a straw. This is your pilot blacking out, and when it goes dark, you'll be waking up in the ocean. So what can we do to learn how to manage our energy and avoid finding Nemo? Here's what I want you to do.
To help you practice energy management, what I want you to do is to load into the FA-26B, which is the free fighter that comes with VTOL VR, and then you're going to load into a free flight mission that has no threats. And once you're airborne, you need to pick a number. In my case, I am choosing 300 knots, and all you need to do is turn horizontally as best you can to maintain that number in full afterburner. So pretty straightforward, but for new players, it's a lot harder than you would expect. So let's go ahead and punch it, and then turn to left or right, and then just simply pull to maintain exactly 300 knots as best you can. If you see the number going up, pull harder. If it's going down, relax the pull. It's as easy as that. This is how you practice energy management in a flat horizontal turn, and it's going to set you apart from so many people when trying to get into a dogfight, because everyone wants to just pull as hard as they can and they wonder why they just stall out of the sky. So once you've practiced this in one direction, go ahead and flip over to the other and continue practicing maintaining that set number. So this is how I want you to practice energy management. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what good is practicing this if whatever number you choose isn't the best number for the best turn rate? Or what if you want to fly a F-45A or a EF-24G Mischief? So how do you know what airspeed to target? Well, let me show you.
Oh boy, I think I'm gonna lose a lot of people with this one, but here we go anyways. This is an EM diagram, and before we continue, I just want to mention, Danny, you are an absolute GOAT alongside the cursed star for coding the whole graph. So please, show them both your love in the comments below for putting together this EM diagram. Now, I know a lot of you are looking at this and you're probably saying, what the hell am I looking at? Do I really need to know this? Well, kinda yes, but also let's break this down into the simplest form. So, you notice there are several lines here, all representing different aircraft in this legend here. So the FA-26B, E-55, the EF-24, and finally the F-45. Notable missing entry is the AV-42C, but no one really dogfights in that anyway, so whatever. So let's keep this very simple and focus only on the FA-26B, which is going to be this green line here. But what is this trying to tell us? All this is saying is that in order to maintain our best sustained turn rate, we want to choose whatever is at the very tippy top of this arc here. So that's going to be approximately right here, which means we want to maintain right around 250 knots, and this will give us right around 19 degrees a second. Now, this isn't a hard, fast number to always abide by because depending on your thrust-to-weight ratio, what altitude you're at, if you're using flaps or not, that will affect what this number actually is. But at the very least, this will give us a ballpark number to shoot for when we're in a dogfight. Now, if you notice, there's this little tiny dotted line all the way going up to right here. What is that? Well, while this is our best sustained turn rate, this is our best instantaneous turn rate, giving us as much as 29 degrees a second. That means we need approximately 450 knots, and we are not sustaining that. We are pulling as hard as we can and dropping speed all the way down to our sustained turn rate of 250 knots. Now, the biggest and probably most dangerous aspect is going to be this dotted line here, but we'll go over what that means when we actually put this into practice.
All right, so to test out these numbers, we are going into this dogfight with flaps set to 1, and we have half fuel, which means our thrust-to-weight ratio is at the exact 1.31 that is stated in the EM diagram. All right, so we're at about 450 knots, pretty much. We're going to try to maintain that. Avoid his nose because he might shoot at the merge, and full burn, and pull, as hard as we can. 9.5 was the max we could get. Oh, there he is. So that dotted line on the EM diagram actually represents 12 Gs, and all we got was 9. And unfortunately, because of the distance from the merge, he's now facing us. Oh, Jesus. So I wonder if the trick is to turn off the G limiter. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the issue. Also, because of the energy management exercises, we want to make sure we stay well above that number. Jesus. We need to be 250 knots or higher. What? Why did that? That was weird. It's like it locked onto... Holy Jesus! What the hell? This mission's called Easy Dogfight. Why am I being shot at already? What are you doing here? Okay, I see how it is. This is not an easy dogfight. This is the exact opposite of easy. Okay, so my theory was that I need to turn off this G limiter. The problem is I'm getting shot at from all directions that if I don't pull, I'm gonna get hit. Oh no, this guy's gonna be a problem. Come on, let's build speed, build speed, build speed. Ugh. We're good. 1, 2, 3, 4. At least 4. Jeez. Holy Jesus. Okay, that was an easy dogfight? Are you kidding me? What is going on? Alright, so this was supposed to be about EM diagrams, but now it's a challenge, and I kinda want to try it. Huh. Yeah. Holy crap, that's 12. Oh my god, I'm already turning around. There is absolutely something to this. Alright, who's next? Alright, you're up. Let's do it. 300 knots, not as good, but we'll make it work. 250 knots, we need to relax the stick, pull him into the HUD now. He's dangerous. Got him. Who's next? Oh, we're not even at 1 flap. I did that without 1 flaps? Are you kidding me? I wonder how much better it would have been with 1 stage of flaps. Oh! Oh my god, there's 2 of them. Okay, you know what? We're gonna extend. We're gonna get our speed back. Pretty sure these guys only have guns. Alright, we're above 500 knots. That'll give us plenty of time to turn back around with enough energy. Okay, we're gonna use God's G this time, which means going into... Oh my god, I snapped around. I cannot believe how fast this thing turns. Just to be clear, you should not expect this kind of performance out of any aircraft that is based on a real-world plane. This is kind of nuts how maneuverable the FA-26B is. Oh no! They got me! Ah! Okay, punching out. Oh, jeez. Are they never ending? Is there... Okay, in case there is an end to this mission, let me know in the comments below and I can dedicate a whole video to trying to complete this mission to its fullest. But this is nuts. As awesome as it is, dogfighting, especially guns-only dogfighting, will only ever happen when you get close enough, which means you need to know how to do what is coming up next. Alright, so today we are flying the free F-16C mod, link in the description below if you want to fly this in VTOL VR, in what is known as BVR, or Beyond Visual Range Combat. And the name of the game is to be the one who slings your missiles the furthest and fastest as possible. And to do that, speed and altitude are your friends. So, as you can imagine, the first thing you want to do is get as much speed and altitude as possible. And while we are continuing to climb up to 30,000 feet, I want to point out when you are on your radar page, and obviously make sure you master arm on and radar on, one thing I recommend if your goal is to get ready for something like DCS using VTOL VR, you want to make sure you change your options from the default display for the radar to instead, from PPI you want to be B-scope and from forward you want to be slew. This looks more like what you would see in DCS, and you have control over the elevation that you're scanning at with your left thumbstick. So we'll go ahead and set that as soy. We can move the cursor around with our right thumbstick, and we can control the radar elevation with our left thumbstick. All this means is that if I expect a target to be somewhere around here, which is about 16 nautical miles, because if you notice there's a 32 on top right, which means every box is 8 miles. So 8, 16, 24, 32. And if I expect a target to be 16 miles away, that's not enough to know where they're at. I also need to figure out what their altitude is, and that's what these two numbers here are for. In this case, I expect the target to be between 16 or 17,000 and 33,000, and just like that, sure enough, he is at 24,000, which is between these two marks. So we'll go ahead and lock him up. We'll select our AIM-120s. We'll continue to build as much speed as we can, and we're already pretty high up. Not quite as high up as I'd like, but we're within kill range already, as indicated by this caret in this square here. So we'll go ahead and Fox 3, and we'll do what is called cranking. So we either crank to the left or right, it's up to you, but the purpose is to move our target to the left or right edges of our radar's display. That way we can continue to guide our missile using the radar on our aircraft And once it goes pitbull, we can do whatever we want, like defend our opponent's missile. And you can actually see the missile trail of our opponent. So even though we splashed him, if it's a Fox 3 missile, just like that, we definitely want to drop chaff and flare and avoid it. Okay, we should be safe. All right, cool. And just like that, those are the basics of BVR.
And of course, all these concepts of dogfighting, BVR, takeoff, startup can all be applied to DCS World in getting you ready for it. But what if you were coming from DCS World? What can you use VTOL VR for to give yourself a little preview of what's to come around sensor fusion and multi-source integration?
We have 2 enemy targets there off to the left, and we can actually see them on our TSD page, and our radar is currently off. But despite that, I can still select them on my TSD and fire an A120 in their direction, all without revealing myself with my radar turning on. And since I'm in an F-45, I remain stealthy off their radar as long as I'm facing their direction.
And because VTOL VR dynamically models RCS or radar cross-section, it's affected by anything from having external weapons to your bay doors being open or even your orientation relative to a radar source.
So if you notice, we are being launched on by a radar SAM site, but because we're in a 5th gen aircraft, we can actually turn in to face it directly and present it with our stealthiest profile, which is just a head-on. And just like that, we're no longer being tracked. Since we're a stealth aircraft, we want to face our targets, which is completely unintuitive because, I mean, it's taken me 3 attempts to record what you're seeing now because my natural reaction is to dive and fly away. But because all I did was just face the target, we are now at our stealthiest angle relative to this radar source, and now we can simply launch on it. But there's not a lot of good we can do against IR SAMs, except flare! Woo! Oh no, we're good. Oh, we're not good. We're not good.
Now, of course, as DCS players, what good is any of this if you can't use your HOTAS or head tracker?
Alright, so let me know if this is something that sounds like you. How many of you would consider playing VTOL VR if you got it free and owned VR? And see what most of the responses are about. HOTAS controls, not interested without HOTAS. I have it, but lack of HOTAS compatibility kills it for me.
Now look, I get it. A lot of people don't want to do this because it's not officially supported, because you have to install a mod to do this. But look, I can play VTOL VR with the VR headset on while still using my HOTAS and rudder pedals. It's great, it's fantastic. The only real challenge is I have to pick up the VR controller in order to interact with a cockpit and then put it back in my lap and start using my HOTAS again. Or if I didn't want to use VR, I can use an IR tracker instead and then just use the mouse to click around the cockpit. Now of course this does mean you cannot play on non-modded hosted missions, but that doesn't mean you can't play in multiplayer.
So as you can see, we are currently in a multiplayer session with the one and only Ralphie dude. Say hi. Oh Jesus. Ralphie, put yourself together, man.
No, I'm good.
Wave high.
I wish I could.
So clearly we're using mods and we're still able to play in multiplayer, so just make sure you're all using the same active mods.
So clearly there are some issues with mods, so don't buy VTOL VR purely for the mods. But if you want to use them, here's how you do it. All you need to do is go to Steam and install the VTOL VR Mod Loader. Then from its workshop you want to subscribe to 3 mods: BYO Joystick, FlatScreen 2, and finally VTOL API. Then launch VTOL VR Mod Loader and go to Settings, then choose whatever option applies to you. If you don't plan on using a VR headset and you just want to use your TrackIR option, then don't worry about this. But if you do have a VR headset and, for example, use Steam VR, then you choose, well, Steam VR. Or if you're like me and you use Virtual Desktop with VDXR, then you want to use OpenXR. If you have a MetaQuest headset, I'm pretty sure you want to use OpenXR, but if that doesn't work, try Oculus. Then once you set that, we want to enable the mods we want to use by clicking this rocket ship icon, and then simply click on the play button. And with that, we'll configure 2 of the mods. First is going to be FlatScreen 2 if you don't want to play in VR. Click on Activate FlatScreen 2, then if you have TrackIR, select Start TrackIR. And just like that, you can now look around with your IR tracking solution or face tracking solution if you have OpenTrack. Then press F9 on your keyboard to close that window. And from here, we can now look at BYO Joystick, which is used for binding your HOTAS to VTOL VR.
So just to give you the basics, if you want to bind an axis, for example, joystick pitch, yaw, or roll, you would select that, click on detect, wiggle that axis on your device, then it will detect it, then simply click done to set it. Or if you want to bind a button, like if you want to set up a modifier, you select that, click on add new, press whatever button you want to set, then click done, and it'll be set there. And once you're happy after you're done binding, click on save, and if you want to copy those saves to another aircraft, you can select that aircraft, then select copy from to load whatever is on that aircraft into this one, and then click on save to save those changes, and when you're happy, press F10 to toggle that window off. And just like that, you are now set up to play VTOL VR without VR and with both your HOTAS and IR tracking setup. Now, one of the downsides of going from VTOL VR to DCS World is going to be the primary means that you interact with the game. That is these things.
DCS World really just isn't made for VR controllers, meaning the hand controllers that you use while playing in virtual reality. So really, your best option when making the switch is to have a stick or throttle. Now, of course, not everyone has a stick and throttle or HOTAS on hand to be able to play DCS World, so that's where I've got you covered. Follow this video and I guarantee that you'll be able to play DCS World to its fullest using a simple Xbox or PlayStation style controller.
Oh my God, that took too many attempts. Going crazy. I was going hands off, touching down to catch the wire. It's so hard.